Okay, so I have a bit of an announcement, a channel update, if you will, to close out 2023. There's something I've been kind of kicking back and forth and mentioning it here and there in Newswave, and it has to do with kind of this event that I've been thinking about for actually a couple of years. Even, I think last year I had kind of discussed the idea of this, and I wanted to go over how we're going to attempt it actually this year. In fact, it would be starting in less than a month. And I wanted to see what you guys think about some of these plans before we really get moving. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and we're going to start today with this video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Factor. Fall is here, which means things are about to get busy with the holiday planning and shopping. Fortunately, Factor takes the stress out of eating healthy. With options like keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, and vegan veggie, there is always plenty to pick from if you want to change things up. Meal plans range from 4 to 18 meals per week, and you can easily skip a week if needed. There are also a bunch of add-ons like juices, energy bites, desserts, and more. I like Factor since it helps to plan out a week of meals and save time since I can skip the trip to the grocery store. I also end up saving money since I just order out less. These meals are fresh, never frozen, and come together in just a few minutes. And the best part, cleanup is a breeze. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code SpawnWave50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. That's factor75.com or click the link below and use code SpawnWave50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. This fall, save time, get Factor, and take the guesswork out of your meal planning. Thanks to Factor for sponsoring today's video. Now, the sponsor technically plays into this because it actually works into some of the other things I want to do for this event. But essentially, I want to run like an entire game of the year bracket where people who are following the channel, watching along, and even participating in some ways that we'll get to, will be able to kind of affect how this all works out. And there's quite a bit that would go into this, and that does include different sponsors, as you just saw, because I would want to kind of treat this as even a celebration for the entire year, which would include giveaways to viewers and people who are part of it as we go along through several different rounds. And the idea is we would run a game of the year bracket, and people would be able to vote on each round as we go through. So I think most people are aware of what a bracket looks like. This is just an example I pulled up very, very quickly, as there are many different websites that will basically build out a bracket for you. And I figured 32 seems about right, because the thing that's tough about game of the year is you got to find the right time to do it. Most would say do it in January. However, you kind of look at December and realize a lot of the big releases are already out, and you can technically just run through that month and then finish, as I'm trying to do, like plan out on the last day of the year. And it's like this final big thing for 2023 where you crown the game of the year winner. Now, this, of course, would be community voting, and, well, things can go off the rails a bit with that one. However, I feel like most people kind of assume like it'll come down to 2 games, and that's not necessarily incorrect. But I think there's a lot of really cool things that can happen along the way. Many, many storylines that can be built up between different matchups and things that happen, whether it could be Alan Wake 2 versus Resident Evil 4. I mean, people are looking at Alan Wake 2 right now as it just came out. Kind of Resident Evil vibes now with that one, especially with the control style and some of the atmosphere that they're presenting. But you could even have Dead Space remake versus Resident Evil 4. There's some really cool stuff that could go on there. So it's not necessarily, okay, who's going to win, Baldur's Gate 3 or Zelda? Who knows? There could be an upset along the way for either one of those. Now, brackets typically will have seeding, and I'm kind of back and forth, and you guys will have to let me know about this, what you think. Seeding I can have visible here, and I don't know if that's going to necessarily sway votes or not. So let me know what you think about the idea of hiding the seeds and really just mentioning if there is an upset, or just leave them out there. And hey, if you see a 4 seed upseed a 1 seed or something, that would just be really cool to see just going along here. Now, I did mention sponsorships, which I've been able to actually line up a number of sponsors that would then basically just fun giveaways for the whole thing, and like actual like legit giveaways, whether it's like multiple games that are given to 4 or 5 people, could be a full system, controllers. There are a lot of ideas that we have there, and that would basically be for each round. So the idea that I have for this to kind of make it an ongoing fun thing throughout basically end of November all the way through December is we have all these rounds here. All right, so it starts, of course, with 32, goes to 16, 8, 4, and then 2. Basically, at the end of every round, we would do a live stream where I would get some of the people from the Spawncast together, maybe some guests even that I can bring in, and we'll go through each matchup, the results one by one of the previous round, and then look forward to the next round that would start, and maybe even give a pitch as to which game each one of us would like to see win or why we liked one game over the other, because we're going to obviously disagree on different game matchups as to which one each one of us likes. And it could be a fun kind of back and forth, maybe hour-long stream where we go through each and every round until we get to the final two, and then we all make a pitch for which one basically would be game of the year. And I mentioned participation from the audience, and I've been thinking about this for a little while, doing call-ins, all right? And I think the way we would do that is we would do call-ins for especially people who have been supporting for a while now on like Patreon and those sorts of things, tiers there where they can join into the conversation and come on for a few minutes, maybe make a pitch for one of the games that they're interested in as we go through each one. And I think it could be a lot of fun, kind of have it as like a radio call-in sort of show. And I think it'd be interesting just to see different opinions, personalities, and ideas be presented there. And that was kind of the idea, to go through each one and just have quite a bit of content as we go forward. I've always enjoyed kind of the community brackets that will get set up, and it's been going on for years now. I know the Game Awards attempted like the Player's Choice thing, and that was kind of strange. But I've followed like game FAQs where they've done the best game of all time, and it took a while to finally get down to the votes, and it ends up being pretty controversial, and there's usually some kind of troll attempt at it, which, hey, technically if you want to go out there and try to advertise and push for a certain game and get people to vote, yeah, have at it. I think Undertale was a big thing that actually benefited from that during the game FAQ polls, and people were not excited to see Undertale take down every single classic game along the way. Now, how will we decide which games go in the bracket? Because I think that's a very good question, and that's something I've been kind of wrestling with a bit. 32 games, you're probably going to hit most of the big titles. And the way I was thinking about it was going the basic route of looking at Metacritic, looking at OpenCritic, coming to a determination as to which ones make the cut in terms of, is it downloadable content? Is it a remake or remaster necessarily? It's going to be tough, because I do look at Resident Evil 4 and I do look at Metroid Prime Remastered as prime candidates to be on that bracket. But then I look at things like Xenoblade Future Redeemed. I look at Ghost Trick even. I'm like, is Ghost Trick, should that go? I mean, I guess it should now that I look at it, but that, or even like Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, people are throwing that into like a game of the year conversation, but to me, that's an expansion. And if you go through the Metacritic scores and the OpenCritic scores, which I already kind of have, I feel like the 32 games that I was coming up with time and time again, I was trying to average out scores and audience reception and stuff. It was probably the 32 games that most people would look at and say, all right, these are the big titles, and it makes sense to have them go up against each other for the best game of the year. I think the seeding will be the only thing that's kind of like, how do we determine, for example, between Baldur's Gate 3 and Zelda, which one is 1 and 2? Although I guess technically doesn't matter, because they'd be separated in the bracket and would only be able to meet in the middle anyway. I was figuring going through number of reviews, OpenCritic, Metacritic average, and just coming up with it that way. It's all subjective at the end of the day, but really, as long as they're just in the bracket, then technically the community will just have a shot at it. Now, how will voting happen? Well, my plan was to basically run the polls like I do normally for Newswave anyway, and then every single day, basically, we'll have a poll for Newswave, and then also on the weekends, technically, as I have a limited number of days in order to get through this 32-game bracket. because I'm still waiting for things like Super Mario RPG, Star Ocean, RoboCop, and others, just in case there's maybe a big surprise or something. I mean, 2023 just keeps on giving, so that's kind of my thought process now, is to get to like the final 10 days or final week of November, start things up, and then we have a live stream going over the bracket we've come up with, and then we just start doing voting right away. And you'll see it in Newswave. I'll even present it and show like any upsets or anything that's happened, comment on it briefly, and then it'll all build up to an eventual live stream to go over all of the results. So that's kind of the plan now. I've been wanting to do a Game of the Year bracket voting thing on the channel for a while now, and I think we have everything figured out now for the call-ins, for the sponsorships, for the giveaways, for the voting, to make it a reality, and we're going to take a shot at it. And if people enjoy it, where we kind of make it like a Game of the Year voting thing, but also kind of a celebration of the year, maybe it can just be a yearly thing going forward. So let me know what you guys think about this idea down below, and maybe any other thing we can do to either improve it, since technically still have about 22 or 23 days before we launch this whole thing. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.